Hello, everyone. This is Anthony Smith, retired Special Warfare Combat Crewman. Uh, I have been conducting interviews with former SWCC operators, talking about injuries, brain injury, orthopedic injuries, spine injuries, things of that nature. This interview is number 26. It's in the realm of operator syndrome. We're talking to former SWCC BM2 Tony Smith, and this one's pretty significant because Tony has had all the organs inside of his body shifted around from wave slamming, violent wave slamming on HSBs. And obviously, he's had traumatic brain injury and other things. So there's going to be a lot of interesting information that we talk about from his time in the Gulf War. And it all just falls in lines with SWCC TBI, major orthopedic injuries, which are the interviews I've been talking about for the last year or two. So here we go. Interview number 26 is a testimonial of Tony's treatment records and the constellation of medical conditions associated with high levels of fast boat wave slamming, producing millions of subconcussive and concussive impacts. He answered questions from the following questionnaire formats and gave permission to create this presentation and share it openly. We used the Operator Syndrome Scale, the GAD-7 scale, the PLC-5 scale, the PHQ-9, the NSI Neurobehavioral Symptoms Inventory, and a SWCC background questionnaire. So Tony Smith. Tony served in the Navy for 12 years. He spent 10 years as a SWCC operator. He had a 9533 NEC. He did 12 deployments at Special Boat Unit 12, basically from 87 to 97. He worked on PBLs, block hammers, which is an Iranian gunboat, and the HSB Scorpion. He has about 15,000 hours of SWCC fast boat time. He served in the first Gulf War on HSBs and some bog hammers and various other craft. He did over 256 NSW missions for the entirety of the war. He has an estimated 4.4 million subconcussive impacts from wave slamming on fast boats. So Navy SWCC is a special class of elite naval warriors who have been a decisive force behind some of America's most important secret missions. Special boat operations have unique and often deadly challenges due to the combination of operating powerful, sophisticated machines designed for speed and stealth in some of the planet's most inhospitable environments. The average SWCC career operator experiences MTBI and major orthopedic injuries over the course of their career in peacetime and in war. And Naval Special Warfare conducts missions in over 70 countries, 365 days a year. The sum of SWCC injury does not accumulate until the operator retires. Throughout this presentation and all the presentations that I do on SWCC, traumatic brain injury, and long-term orthopedic injury, we will focus a lot on a term called operator syndrome. It's not a medical diagnosis, it's a framework that we use to describe a nexus of symptoms. It was termed and written up and published by Dr. Christopher Free. There's a DOI link there to it as well. We're talking about the nexus of operator syndrome as it pertains to special warfare boat operators. And I contacted Dr. Free, spoke with him on the phone, have gone back and forth with him on email and communicating with him to better understand operator syndrome and what it is and how it pertains to the SOF community, and continue to collaborate with Dr. Free in the future. Operator syndrome for SWCC operators is a constellation of psychiatric illnesses and disorders along with chronic major orthopedic and spinal injuries. Operator syndrome affects all special operations forces from every major branch. This particular slide shows operator syndrome symptoms, or the constellation of different issues. Traumatic brain injury, endocrine dysfunction, sleep disturbance, obstructive sleep apnea. Everything here in red are the things that Tony is contending with. His sleep disturbance is severe. His obstructive sleep apnea is severe. He has chronic pain, joint pain, back pain, orthopedic problems, headaches, some depression, some PTSD, pretty severe, some anger, some worry, rumination, and stress reactivity, marital and family issues, being on guard and hypervigilant, issues with concentration, vestibular and vision impairments, challenges to the transition from military to civilian life, and he has loss of grief or survivor's guilt, pretty severe, pertaining to one of his buddies that committed suicide back after the Gulf War. All right, the next couple of slides are going to cover a lot of the different comorbidities that Tony experiences due to a fast boat, wave slamming. Uh, TBI, Tony has a high exposure of self-concussive and concussive impacts on HSBs with multiple TBI related symptoms. He needs to attend a TBI clinic for evaluation and proper diagnosis. To date, other SWCC operators who served with Tony have been diagnosed with TBI due to millions of subconcussive wave slamming impacts from the same deployments and missions as Tony. PTSD, he has a diagnosis, VA rating, ongoing issue that he's had since the 90s. Sleep apnea diagnosis and CPAP, VA rating, ongoing issues since the 90s. Issues with irritability, easily annoyed, mental fatigue, dizziness, vision, concentration, and focus issues, little pleasure in doing things, increased and decreased appetite. He has headaches, migraines, anxiety symptoms, depression symptoms, and sensitivity to noise. All right, more symptoms, more issues. Tony has had 4 heart ablation procedures for tachycardia. He had his first heart catheterization in the 90s due to heart issues developed from wave slamming on high-speed boats. Doctors described his heart issues as something that would be related to involving or being involved in a motor vehicle accident and the impacts associated with it. He has spine, C-spine injury fractures, thoracic degenerative changes, lumbar spine pain, numbness and tingling in hands on early onset of the 90s, numbness and tingling in feet, onset of greater than 5 years, low testosterone, indicative of endocrine dysfunction, and apparent symptoms of allostatic overload. High-speed boats, or HSBs. The HSB was a very fast and violent boat. Unlike most modern SWCC boats, it had several different versions, some capable of speeds all the way up to 80 miles per hour. When this boat was operated at top speed and it jumped out of the water, as seen in this particular picture here, the landing was so violent it could be up to 100 plus Gs very often, and the operators would crash into the boat after the boat hits the water, get knocked unconscious, break a bone, etc., different things like that. Tony remembers having passengers that broke their wrists from trying to hang on. They were required to wear kidney belts and jock straps to prevent injury. What is unique about Tony's experience on these boats is that the tremendous force of wave crashing caused Tony's organs to shift inside of his body. In a recent major abdominal surgery, Tony's doctor discovered that all of his organs had shifted out of place. The doctor asked Tony what kind of high impact collision he had been in to cause this. Tony responded that he had only been in collisions with the sea on SWCC fast boats. We now know all SWCCs suffer similar fates with injuries to their bodies and their brains from fast boat wave slamming, as several have committed suicide and many more have had suicidal ideation. Down teammate. Troy Bailey was Tony's teammate. They served together in the first Iraq War. Troy suffered severe wave slamming. They all suffered bombardments of rockets and mortar fire and other things, among many other issues that were facing the Gulf War. They did several hundred missions with bad seas, causing many wave slamming traumatic events. Soon after returning home from the war, Troy took his own life. Troy may be the first SWCC casualty of suicide. Since 1994, several SWCCs have taken their this particular path due to severe brain trauma from fast boat wave slamming. This is an issue. It needs to be dealt with uh, among the many other things that SWCC operators face. This slide we talk about evidence that Tony suffered subconcussive and concussive events from wave slamming on SWCC fast boats. Tony experienced full body slamming and whiplash due to high G-force wave pounding on SWCC boats. Tony experienced extreme sleep deprivation due to SWCC operations during the Gulf War. He experienced seeing stars and spots in his vision due to high G-force impact wave pounding on SWCC boats. He experienced mental fatigue due to high G-force impact wave pounding on SWCC boats. He experienced concentration and lack of focus issues because of wave pounding. He experienced 4 to 10 foot seas at 50 knots uh, during high G-force wave pounding on SWCC boats, and he experienced orthopedic injuries due to wave pounding on SWCC boats. All right, traumatic brain injury for SWCC Tony Smith. Um, the average SWCC logs 3,000 hours of boat time in a deployment cycle. Based on a Roche's 94 study, we could see that 6 days, 36 hours of running boats, there was over 8,000 impacts from 2 to 25 Gs. In this particular study, 4,496 impacts range 5 Gs or greater. And at 5 Gs and greater, we start to have the whiplash event take place. So we're looking at 124 significant whiplash events in an hour based on that particular study. And then you look at the totality of events or wave slamming events. The average SWCC, according to just to this study, would be about 374,000 significant wave slamming events in a deployment cycle, which totals out to about 4.5 million, basically, over a 12 deployment cycles for Tony Smith. Other studies show that the boat slams into the waves at 1 second intervals. We know that that's 3,600 wave slamming impacts in an hour, which is about 28,000 in an 8-hour run. So regardless of how many deployments the SWCC operator did, one deployment is over several million impacts, which they're all subconcussive impacts. All right, on this slide, we just kind of summarize operator syndrome symptoms for Tony Smith. Etologically speaking, Tony's a 57-year-old Gulf War veteran and former SWCC operator as of August 2024. He has 10 years of SWCC service, SWCC boat service, 12 plus SWCC deployments, including 15,000 hours of SWCC boat time, causing over 4.5 million subconcussive impacts while wave pounding on SWCC boats. Tony has over 17 symptoms of MTBI and a constellation of operator syndrome symptoms. He endured full body slamming and whiplash from wave pounding at significant G forces, 10 to 60 Gs with peaks over 100, and high volume subconcussive exposure contributed to his diagnosis of PTSD, sleep apnea, tachycardia, alastolic overload, and a constellation of other issues. He also has various issues with his spine that continue to degenerate with age. Most significantly, Tony has heart issues due to violent crashing forces of the HSB slamming into waves at potentially 100 G impacts. This level of impact is likened to motor vehicle accidents. Also significant as a former teammate who committed suicide just after returning from the Gulf War, and Tony shares the burden of guilt from the loss of his teammate and his brother. A TBI clinic has not evaluated Tony due to a lack of knowledge and understanding of subconcussive impacts during his time in service. However, now the new knowledge and treatment protocols exist within naval special warfare that delineate the constellation of injuries to include TBI associated with SWCC fast boat service. Tony deserves to be diagnosed and treated in a TBI clinic that specializes in subconcussive TBI. Long-term effects of MTBI major orthopedic injuries are debilitating for SWCC operators like Tony. Tony does have a 100% disability rating from the VA despite lacking many diagnoses for several of his issues. Also interesting to note is Tony played high school football, wrestled, and participated in martial arts. Okay, conclusions from the ongoing SWCC TBI research project that I've been involved in for about 3 or 4 years now. I've done 26 interviews or record reviews with former SWCC operators. There's a survey that I did with 314 participants. With the growing body of documented evidence, the following constellation of issues have been understood. All SWCC operators experience millions of subconcussive impacts leading to TBI and potential encephalopathy. All SWCCs suffer from musculoskeletal disorders or MSDs. All SWCCs suffer from whiplash-associated disorder or WADS. All SWCCs suffer from chronic pain disorder. All SWCCs suffer from chronic spinal degenerative changes. All SWCCs suffer from high allostatic overload, known as operator syndrome. All SWCCs suffer from blast overpressure due to heavy weapons and small arms fire. The SWCC community, is small and therefore it's overlooked. However, it is the only SOF unit in the United States with a 100% injury rate due to the violent training and operational environment, U.S. Special Operations, Maritime Mobility Endure. Thank you. The information in this presentation provides evidence that Tony was a SWCC operator on SWCC fast boats for multiple deployments and served during the first Gulf War. There is a gap in TBI research on the retired SWCC operator peer group, as members of this group suffer severe long-term issues of TBI and major orthopedic injuries. A couple of references in here for you to take a look at as well. Thank you. All right, here are some links to SWCC TBI in the news. The first link there is a New York Times article. I worked with the author, David Phillips, for probably the last year, trying to get him to write this story, and it was finally published a couple of weeks ago. It's called Chronic Brain Trauma is Extensive in Navy's Elite Boat Crews. The pounding that sailors' brains take from years of high-speed wave slamming and the special boat teams can cause symptoms and wreck their careers and their lives. So there's a link there. Definitely a great article to look at. Also a link to an article that I did in Havoc Journal, one in Task Force Dagger, and then there's some stuff there on Instagram.